Welcome to Pitch It To Me Podcast, a show about the subjective past, present, and potential future of flesh and blood design. Can we produce a good podcast even after getting toasty on margaritas? Stay tuned to find out. In today's episode, we check in on the new set. On Red Pitch, Joel will revisit our predictions from previous episodes. On Yellow Pitch, Clark will talk about what it feels like to open Dusk Till Dawn product. And on Blue Pitch, I, Fuzzy, will lead a discussion on some of our biggest surprises in the set so far. You can find us across all socials such as TikTok and Instagram at Pitch It To Me Podcast.
Alrighty gamers, turn zero. Dusk Till Dawn released last weekend. We've opened some boxes, some cases, played some armories, so we wanted to take this opportunity to evaluate our past selves and our first impressions playing with the set. Were we right? What did we learn? Is it any good? Is it fun? And how many incessant questions am I going to ask this podcast? What do we think, guys?
More.
Probably not. That seems to be a me thing. I feel like you really questioned yourself out there, Joel.
Yeah, I tend to do that a lot.
Always a good time for self-reflection. And that's what we're about with this podcast. Growing as people together with you, the listener.
And here I thought I was about flesh and blood.
Little did you know.
That too. Joel, I would love to hear you talk about some of your predictions from before, because we had an episode a while back about Dusk Till Dawn and what we were hoping to see.
Yeah, so we made some predictions. Some of them were right, some of them were wrong, and some of them we didn't expect at all, actually. So I had some Bolton predictions initially. One of the pain points for a long time has been a lack of guaranteed go again. You know, it was a lot of relying on people to make really bad blocks or for me to have exactly what I needed at a specific time to give go again. There weren't too many combo starters to a long chain of attacks similar to what you see a traditional aggro deck doing. And so that's what I wanted to see. You know, initially I wanted a specifically red and blue version of Via the Vanguard, Bolton specialization. I thought that would be obviously broken, but I still wanted to see it because I feel like he deserves it being a 3 intellect hero. Instead, we got some really great charge cards like Beckoning Light and Spirit of War, which have relevant on-hits for every attack action throughout the turn.
Which one is Beckoning Light again?
Beckoning Light is the one where if you charge a yellow card, any attack action card that hits, you can put an attack action card from your graveyard on top of your library. So you can essentially recur your past attack so that, you know, because you're losing a card every time you charge. So the cards that are in graveyard are still untapped resources. So this card gives you longevity in a game where you're kind of burning through your deck faster than everybody else. So the other one, Spirit of War, this one's really relevant because even though it's not another functional reprint of Via the Vanguard, it kind of is because it gives you a brand new token, Courage tokens, which buff your next sword or attack action card, which in Bolton, it basically just means go again. So if you hit that first one or find a way to give Spirit of War go again, then every subsequent hit, including the one after Spirit of War hit, will get go again with this buff to your attack.
Yeah, I noticed that something that LSS really tried to do was give more of those natural ways of buffing attack actions.
For sure.
Either with better rate attack reactions or with these courage tokens, just small little ways of saying okay, they don't have to block with an attack action for you to get that +1 and go again.
Right.
You can do it yourself. You're not entirely reliant on your opponent's play to make your game plan work.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm dense, but it took me a little bit to realize that those courage tokens are so good with Bolton, not just because you're banking the value, but because they turn on his attack reaction ability.
So now if people leave Bolton to his own devices, at least I can do more stuff on my turn. It's not just charge Arsenal and then block, whatever.
Yeah, those courage tokens really add up.
Yeah.
Can you do a lot?
You can do a little. I don't know how much you can do. I feel like it's a good step in the right direction, but I don't know if it's enough.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I really wanted, because you don't get a ton of benefit from putting cards into your soul. So this set gave you a lot of cards that really interact with specifically yellow cards being charged, and a very unique series of yellow cards being the new bannerets and a yellow card in general, There are some cards that get bonuses either through power or go again on hit if you charge a yellow. And the banneret of like courage and gallantry specifically give you courage tokens and quicken tokens when you charge, which, if I have an off turn, like I'm just charging once or charging on my turn with some of the other cards that I have access to, then I can set up my next turn with go again, either via quicken token or courage token, which makes Bolton extremely consistent. And like my off turns are fewer and farther between.
Yeah, I thought those banneret designs were really slick. The idea of something that I was already doing, but I get a bonus for it. Like with Brute, they printed Skullcrack, where if it's discarded, you get a resource. Something that I was already planning on doing with my cards, now I get a bonus for doing it. That sounds like it could be a strict upgrade, right? And we've seen cases where that also does not happen, like with Hyperdriver Dash, those cards where if you banish it, you get to put a counter on your Hyperdriver. Now, Dash builds weren't already running the Hyperdrivers, but this idea of getting value for something not being played, but used as a secondary resource, I think that's a really cool design that I always love when it pops up, and I was kind of excited to see it here in Bolton. I think it's really cool. It feels like a very natural progression to me, when you have these secondary resource heroes, you get rewarded just for using those cards in that way.
Yeah. I love that Brute parallel because Rhinar with Intimidation is like very, very nice. And it's one of the reasons why I think Rhinar has remained at least fairly competitively viable for a long period of time, because he had that baked in from the get-go. But now they're giving that to Bolton. As, yes, we know that every single play you make is now going to require another card. And because of that, we're going to try to ease that restriction a little bit more by giving you more value. I also do like how, unlike in Brute, where a lot of those cards that you want to discard are only at the Majestic rarity, they printed some rare bannerets. Are all of them good? No. But it is nice to see that they are experimenting in bringing those in that powerful offsetting, bringing that down into the rare and seeing what they can do in both a weaker and a more powerful space.
For sure. Yeah. Great distinction on both of those.
And I will say this about supplemental sets. They really explore the design space that they push there, They came up with this idea of, okay, we're ready to print cards that give you a benefit when you charge them. Here's all the different ways they can do that. Quicken token, gain a life, courage token, +1 defense, +1 attack. We don't know if all these are good, but rather than leave holes in the design space, they fully explore it from the get-go. And there's definitely ways that they could still explore it later on, but all of the like baseline, like what you might expect from a card effect like that, even if they're not all good, they printed them all. That way they exist in the game, and we have the tools now to work with them and play with them in whatever context we like. Commoner, Talishar roguelikes. Like, I like how LSS is willing to give us all the different presentations of an idea in these supplemental sets.
I almost didn't register you saying commoner. Like, I was like, yeah, I guess it could be good in commoner. But yeah, I think it also, because like there was no incentive to play Bolton for a long time. So now this maybe gives people a reason to, and therefore expand on like what builds come out, and then maybe they find this like really sick interaction with X card and Y card. You know what I mean?
And that probably won't happen, but it's not for LSS to decide, right?
Right.
They're just giving us all these different tools, and who knows what's going to end up being good or playable.
For sure.
Plus with Bolton, it's not exactly they were, just one of these printings at the rare slot is all of a sudden going to make him incredibly broken and take over the meta.
Yeah.
He wasn't really positioned to do that. So it was pretty safe to do that exploration.
Yeah. Right. But there is one rarity slot that kind of did fix a hero in a big way, in my opinion. And that would be Levia's new Levia Redeemed and Blasphemous Levi Consumed. Previously in an episode, Clark designed this really cool card. It's like a legendary brute headpiece that essentially, for your action for the turn, you can just not die to Blood Debt for a turn. And we were kind of just debating on, should this have go again? Should this have like Braid Break? Should it be once per turn? Should it break on use type of thing? And then they just blew it out of the water and created a demi hero so that you have access to it the entire game.
And this was episode 3, right? Our first Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah. This was way back then. I invaded Joel's yellow pitch to put my little baby card design out there. I don't think that I called the new demi-hero.
Could anyone have predicted that?
Yeah, that's...
No, they went to a brand new design space. I think someone... if someone did predict it, everyone would have just been like, haha, that's so silly.
Yeah, seriously.
But I do think that with that design, me and LSS, we were both having the same idea, which is that we really listened to the legitimate criticisms of the Levia community. And the legitimate criticism was, it feels bad to have an off turn in the late game and just die to my hero. No one else has that, and I don't think I'm getting enough for it. There were kind of two responses to that. Okay, we can either really buff you during the game so that when you have your off turn in the late game, you had a reward for it, or we just take away that negative altogether. And I think taking away the negative altogether was much better.
For sure. So you kind of hit that one right on the head, like not in the sense of like calling the design space, but pretty much calling what Levia needed to be usable. Because I feel like now she's in a really good spot to be taken to like events competitively, and that's not what this podcast is about, but it's still relevant because I would take Levia to armories and like tier 2 events and like expect to do something with it, and actually did a few times, but nothing to the extent that you can do with it now with this new card. So I ended up getting like all of my predictions right for a Bolton, because you can like, you know, charge from pitching, things like that, the combo starters, the go again, all the stuff.
You also called, just pointing this out, especially because I think this was a slightly more out there prediction, charging from the top of your deck.
Right, yeah. That's what
that was something that you mentioned in the previous episode that ended up being on a card.
Yeah, so with the new Fable and Prayer to Bologna, you can now pitch to Prayer to Bologna to charge, buff your next attack, so it turns on your Bolton ability for the rest of your turn. And then Light of Soul, anytime you pitch to anything, you can look at the top and charge that way. So both of those I think are great tools for Bolton. Again, don't think it like puts him anywhere above like B tier, but still really cool ways to put him in the right direction. I was, however, wrong on my Levia predictions with like transferring Blood Debt to your opponent, Soul Shackles, or like intimidates from banishes, stuff like that. So on one of the first episodes we decided to record, we kind of went over some card designs, and one of them we had to end up cutting for like audio quality was Clark's really cool design of a D-React for Brute that lets you intimidate on your opponent's turn, and he just happened to call yet another Brute Legendary as an equipment slot. So
it's weird. With my Diadem design, I was like, Legendary Headpiece, and then somewhere else entirely different, I was like, on defense, Intimidate. And I should have just put the two of them together.
I remember when you first brought it up, you were like, oh, Intimidate on your opponent's turn. And I was like, I don't think that would work very well. I don't see LSS printing something like that. And I was wrong. Clark was right. Here we are.
I was super wrong in saying that it would be fine as a normal defense reaction that you could run 9 of, because that would be so stupid. I played against Scowling Fleshbag at our armory. Joel, you played it against me, and I was like, well, now I just have Revel in Room Bud to play. Oh, no, it's banished? Okay. I don't get to have my pop-off turn anymore.
Yeah. I'm really glad they didn't make it a defense reaction, because the value off of a one-time 2 block, it turns into another husk, essentially, because whatever you banish, like, turned into usually like you followed up with a Snatch or Revel after or before a Rosetta or something like that. Just any diabolical card as a turn ender is now just banished, and I get to continue my turn as normal.
I mean, it literally is a husk. If you think about it, it blocks 2 and then takes a card out, and the general idea of what one card provides is 4 damage. So if it's blocking 2 damage and then banishing a card from hand that can't be played that turn, that's 6 damage right there.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
So when people talk about it like a husk, it kind of is just a husk. Now, obviously, it depends. Maybe they were planning on arsenaling that card anyway, and that's where a little bit of that skill comes into play. I think it's an incredible design. I think it works very cleanly. It's a great new space for Brutes that we're probably not going to see anywhere else because it's legendary.
For sure.
One thing I like about that card is it strays a little bit away from the idea of like value over time. It's like one really strong use. And I think equipment like that can be really cool. Having a game plan for your single-use equipment can be really cool.
Yeah, it was the perfect segue into a more aggressive meta just to give Levia more tools. Because she needs a lot of cards in hand to turn off Blood Debt during the mid-game. Late game, you don't care as much now. But having that really insane pivot turn without having to give up your husk and then leaving yourself defenseless for subsequent turns is, perfect design space.
Same thing for Rhinar too. I'd say Rhinar really wants to keep these higher card density hands. He needs 3 cards. Sometimes he needs 4 cards, and just being able to say, "Oh, I can block a good amount of damage with this Scowling Flesh Bag by intimidating you on your turn," gives him the ability to keep that Massacre hand or that Alpha Rampage, the Massacre Alpha Rampage combo.
Sure, yeah. Rhinar's a little bit overshadowed right now because Levia has all the shiny new toys, but I'm definitely excited to see what Rhinar can do with those same tools.
I am happy that they printed it as a brute card rather than a shadow brute card.
Right, true.
Before we move on, I wanted to mention that the custom card idea that I had for Runeblade, I called him Zedge. He revolved around having these kind of rune gateway tokens that sat on the field, and you could tuck things in and play like one of them a turn, basically. It is sort of similar to the way that Vincent plays compared to Chain, where Chain is playing lots of Blood Debt cards from Banish each turn, potentially. Vincent really focuses on playing one, although Vincent does have some really explosive turns where she can warm things up and play a whole bunch from Blood Debt in a turn, but it's a little bit costly. She definitely has more of a focus on playing 1 or 2 things from Blood Debt each turn. Would you guys agree?
Oh, certainly. And I think it was the right place to go with Shadow Runeblade. I think the playing multiple things from Banish was just never going to be balanced, never really going to work out, no matter how much they tuned those cards down. And this is a much cleaner space. It feels a little bit more Runeblade heavy, Vincent. That was interesting to see.
Yeah, I kind of see that too, because they kind of combined the fact that you can generically like play things from Banish, but the on hits, the rates, the reduction all feel very Runeblade centric. So I kind of agree with you there. And I do like the fact that she's limited in a few ways, and we'll talk about that more later, but just seeing her design flesh out as like the set like fully released was interesting because it kind of went hand in hand with what I wanted Runeblade to move more towards. Like, not so much, it didn't go into like the pitching non-attack and attacks to things, but it's like these larger attacks that you have to like set up more and like use a little bit more finesse instead of just like vomiting 20 damage plus every turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like it is the more fair Runeblade.
For sure. Yeah, we wanted to throw that in there because we are not officially a Bolton or Levia podcast.
Yeah, we did talk about other things. Thankfully, Fuzzy keeps us honest with that. Speaking of things that we kind of didn't talk about, one thing that we dodged about on the first episode was the new Prism. Or like what they were going to do with Light Illusionists. We just kind of didn't talk about that. I don't think any of us are really, apart from Joel's allegiance to Bolton and the Light Brigade. Like, we're not exactly big light people. Fuzzy really likes Runeblade. He's really excited about Vincent. I really like Levia. We didn't really care about Light Illusionist. And then I'm going to talk here in Yellow Pitch about opening packs because in my first box, my first box I ever bought of Flesh and Blood was this Dusk Till Dawn set.
Wow.
And then the first pack of Dusk Till Dawn I ever opened, I pulled Light of Soul. I pulled the chase card.
Unreal. Very first one.
No, it is the cheap chase card. Like if it was Marvel Levia, that would be some real money. But it's still pretty wacky.
I feel a tiny bit like the spotlight was taken from me because this weekend I also opened my first Fabled ever. It was also a rainbow foil Light of Soul. But yeah, you're pretty special too, Clark.
Yeah.
We're both having a special weekend.
I'm sorry that I overshadowed you, but it's kind of your fault for filming the TikTok of me opening it.
That's true. I felt that was really lucky to get that on camera.
And from the same case is still a little...
Same case. Same case where you also pulled a cold foil Oh god, it's Empyrean
Yeah, I pulled a cold foil extended art Empyrean Rapture,
Rapture. Thank you, Fuzzy.
which is somehow worth twice as much as the rainbow foil Fabled. I felt pretty lucky. 2 boxes to get both of those cards is some really good pulls.
Yeah, it really felt like LSS was punishing us for talking so much about Levia. They're like, why would we give you Levia cards?
For sure.
Have all these Prism cards, the one hero you didn't talk about.
Yeah.
This is on you.
They listen to our podcast too closely.
Yeah.
Supplemental sets kind of have to be fun to open, right? Because with booster draft sets, you can always draft them, and if you don't open them, you're like, oh, well, maybe this was meant to be a draft pack. It was not my destiny to open this pack and get something good out of it, you know? But with supplemental sets, you have to open them without playing with them in order to get the cards, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
need to feel like you're getting good things.
Do you feel like this set does a good job with that?
I felt like it did a good job because in previous sets, all of my supplemental set cases were violently terrible. Like it was,
Bonk.
it was like offensive. The how bad they were. Anybody who knows me knows about my dynasty cases, and so to have that opposite luck in this set was very refreshing and kind of. I don't think it makes me want to buy more in the future. I think I just got lucky and I'm okay to walk away from it, you know?
The pack opening experience is an important one. It's one of the main ways that we engage with the game. It's oftentimes the start of how most people engage with the game. Yes, there are these sealed blitz decks and drafts and sealed tournaments, pre-releases that can happen. Those are great entry points into the game. But a lot of the times, it's just people opening packs at the LGS. And then saying, here, you want to open one of my packs? It's that cardboard crack. They just, first one's free, baby.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's a lot of engagement with the game that comes from wanting to open packs for a game that you're not super familiar with. People see Flesh and Blood booster packs being opened and it makes them interested. They're like, wait, what's that?
No,
What game
seriously.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every card is interesting and brand new, and they're excited about it, which is so different from the veteran player experience because we open it and go trash, 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 bunk common foil, 2 rares, whatever. And that's
Hey, new guy.
You want,
You want
this?
some chow?
Wow, thanks. You're welcome. It's fucking duck shit.
and then on the off chance that they pull something big, right? Then you all get to hype that new guy up.
Yeah,
they
for
feel
sure.
good. Yeah. So it's very win-win for the new player. For veteran players, I would say that the pack opening experience hasn't been great for me up until this set.
For sure.
It feels very bad to win one game at my armory, get my pity pack, and then when I open it, I pull 2 bunk common rares. One of them, and both of them are yellow, and it's like, I'm never gonna run this.
Not the yellow.
Not the yellows. I'm never gonna run these cards.
Call those coasters.
And it feels bad. Opening the occasional pack doesn't feel good. Opening the occasional box until this set didn't feel good. Because you would buy a box for $80. And sometimes that's what players can afford. I know that in terms of Magic the Gathering, the way that me and Fuzzy engaged with the game forever was that we would buy a box, we would draft it, and then we would give out whatever packs were left over as the pricing. And everyone would just pay their piece to pay for the box. And that felt good, right? Everyone got rares, everyone got cards. And then, okay, here in supplemental sets, we can't really do that in Flesh and Blood. You can't really run those sealed events. And then you're opening chaff. A lot of chaff. And so I noticed, I kind of looked into this, especially because after the pre-release, I noticed there were some big pulls coming out online. And sure, maybe some of them were fake. But then people started showing their box openings and their case openings. They started filming them and putting them on YouTube. And people were still pulling big. Multiple Majestics that were very playable. Multiple Legendaries sometimes in the same box. Every box now has a cold foil in it. It's starting to feel like they're upping the distribution of these higher rarity cards for this set to make a better opening experience.
Yeah, like I think that's something we also saw a little bit in Dynasty, although with Dynasty it wasn't on the same level because it doesn't feel like there was a whole lot of playable stuff in Dynasty, but they came out with a whole suite, like every class got a piece of equipment and or weapon, and every class got a Marvel version of that card. And so almost any player had one exciting thing that they were hoping to pull, right? In this set, it's Marvel Angels, you know? There's a whole lot of Marvels, they're all Angels. It feels like there's a lot of different ways I could pull a really cool card if I open this set. Do you think it's something that they do for supplementals rather than draft sets? There was still the Marvel like codexes and outsiders, but there's like a lot of different Marvels, a lot of different Majestics in the supplemental sets, it feels like.
The way I perceive it, it's a way to get more people into these heroes because, like, for instance, Prism stuff has always been expensive, like pretty much up until she got banned. Even afterwards, like with Dromai and even the hint of a new Prism or a new light set, that stuff skyrocketed. So it's like really tough to get into Prism if you aren't already entrenched in it from a previous era of Flesh and Blood. And so now if we're seeing rainbow foils for like sub $60, like that feels really good for me, especially because I'm a cheapskate. But if newer players like open the set, see Levia, I feel like most people I try to introduce to the game gravitate to her so hard and I'm like, please don't play this hero, bro. I'm begging you, don't, because you will not play Flesh and Blood after that. And so now it doesn't feel as bad, and it's like cheaper to get into Levia and Bolton and Prism and Vincent, minus a few cards, but it definitely feels better to open boxes of this, like you said, Clark and Fuzzy.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely happens every single time new cards get printed, right? Like that's typically when you either see cards at their lowest or most expensive. And then once we really see their influence on the metagame, we see those cards start to shake out more to their proper prices. And you'll still see like high variances. I've heard of, was it Warmonger's Diplomacy going for like $50 in some places, but then you go onto online marketplaces and it says it's still floating around 25, 30.
Yeah.
Some people might even be selling it for cheaper than that because they're like, I think this card may not end up, doing great in the meta.
Sure.
We need to see multiple tournaments. We need to see how Nationals shakes out, maybe even Worlds to shake out before we really see where everything's going to settle. But for now, it feels like everyone is opening more of these bigger impact cards. And I think that that's very good. One, because it does make things cheaper. I mean, my big fable, Rainbow Foil, Light of Soul, is $90. That's what it says on the marketplace, $90. That means if a player thinks, I need to have this card for my Prism deck, it is way more affordable than normal to get it. Is that because this is being printed more? Is it because there are just more higher rarity things getting pulled, like just the rates are higher? I'm not sure. I think it's also important to note how Flesh and Blood, especially investors and players, have this very different idea. I was watching a YouTube video of someone who like tries to follow the marketplace for Flesh and Blood.
Yeah.
And they mention how in Magic the Gathering on TCG Player, because that's publicly available data, so that's why they use TCG Player data, they say that Magic players are more likely to buy sealed boxes. Flesh and Blood players are more likely to buy sealed cases. And that harkens back to apparently an old age of Flesh and Blood where distribution of certain chase cards, these fables or these legendaries, were distributed based on cases, not boxes.
Yeah.
So maybe now as Flesh and Blood is growing, they're starting to think more about that distribution per box. Again, there seems to be this expectation of every box has one cold foil in it. That makes it more willing to just buy one box. And that means that it's easier for college students, young professionals, high schoolers to be able to buy and get into this game, when I think Flesh and Blood has had a slightly older, more experienced TCG player base.
Flesh and Blood players scare me. They're so willing to drop like hundreds and hundreds of dollars on the new set when it comes out.
Yeah, there's one person in our Discord who like bought like 2 cases of it.
Oh my goodness.
No, I bought 2 cases. The person you're referring to bought 5.
5 cases?
5 cases.
Wow.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
That's over $1,000 in Flesh and Blood cards. I'm so safe and secure in my financial situation, but I'm nowhere near safe and secure enough to buy $1,000 of lottery tickets.
I'm unemployed right now. I can't be dropping $1,000 on stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
I bought a case. Look, I tapped in. Look, I did the thing that all the Flesh and Blood players are doing. I did buy a case. But knowing that I was going to sell one of those boxes and I wasn't just going to like crack them, you know? But I think you're right.
He sold it to me.
Flesh and Blood players are more comfortable, I feel like, just buying like lots and lots of cases of cards. Whereas Magic culture is more like, yeah, instead of, I will buy multiple boxes, I'll buy like 3 or 4 boxes, and that's like a large amount. Because I'm a really enfranchised player, I buy 3 or 4 boxes. Flesh and Blood players are so intense.
Or each box will like have a promo, the buy a box promo that Magic has.
And so I look at like these anime card games where people on release will buy like 8, like not only are their boxes per case way higher than Flesh and Blood or Magic the Gathering, for instance, the chase cards are worth way more and way more hyped than any other card game I've ever seen. It's diabolical to look at. And then you see Magic the Gathering where you can get a lot of really good playables off of like one box, and the chase cards are like $20 or like maybe $50 if they're really playable in Commander and Standard or Modern or whatever the case may be. And Flesh and Blood for a while, the reason why it was case is because there's like a Fable every set. There's like some Marvels being introduced now and some really sick legendaries. And so now it's kind of shifting from the gradient of like this like anime card game philosophy to now it's getting closer to like the Magic side of things, where it's like if you buy a case, you're going to get a lot of really good playables, legendaries or you could just buy the singles. It doesn't matter. Like the hype isn't as high, I guess. There's still chase cards, don't get me wrong. Like the Marvel Levia, for instance, is worth like $800 right now, something like that. So, but I just see it in that like kind of like scale, I guess. And I'm really liking the way Flesh and Blood is moving right now in terms of nurturing their fan base.
It really could be much worse as far as affordability of cards goes.
Yeah, and the fact that I feel like they're emphasizing it, again, these pull rates are just so good.
Yeah.
And it's really crazy to think about. I mean, I still remember the first post I saw on the subreddit for Flesh and Blood was someone like pulling 3 cold foils and the legendary out of like their 6 packs of Dusk Till Dawn that they won from their pre-release. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Is it just the boxes that they sent for pre-release? Are those super pumped? And it's like, no, it's kind of like a lot of these boxes seem to have a higher rate. And again, we're probably going to need to wait a month, 2 months to really see where everything shakes out.
For sure.
But I would not be surprised if it shakes out and says, no, there were higher printings of Majestics and there were higher printings of Legendaries. I think that's so important because when your brand new player goes to an armory and they get stomped and they get their pity pack, they want to still feel good. It's one thing for the people pulling cases to be like, oh yeah, in 60% of my packs that I open, there's not going to be anything in there.
Yeah.
That's one thing. It's another thing for that person just trying to play the game, just trying to get into it, just starting to get into it, not willing to drop those $300, $400 on a case. And can they still feel good engaging with the game at the lower level? And until now, they haven't been able to. I hope that this is not just a trend for supplemental sets. I hope that this is a trend for the rest of the game. I want to see this in draft as well, because I think it'll make draft more interesting.
Yeah.
This is not a Majestic in my set. I want to take this really good red common, but maybe I need to take this Majestic so that it doesn't go around the table. That's now an interesting draft choice. Like, I think it should just continue on. Playing with legendaries in draft might be a little too strong. So maybe like this doesn't just need to stay in supplemental sets. Who knows? But I think it
is a formula. I'm glad I'm not the one that has to deal with it. But I'm really excited to see what LSS does with it for sure.
100%.
I mean, even if this is just 4 supplemental sets, these higher pull rates and supplemental sets, I think it's going to be really helpful.
For sure.
Really helpful to the game. So I feel like we've kind of talked all that there is to talk about opening packs. There's not a ton of conversation to have about that.
If you really want to see us open some packs, that is one of the few things we have on our TikTok right now.
Let's go.
Yeah, we're going to be moving those over to our YouTube shorts as well, so that if you're just like, no, I will never get on that Gen Z hell site, don't
Understandable.
worry. We'll
Valid.
put it on the millennial hell site. With that being said, we talked a lot about pulling cards Fuzzy, for Blue Pitch, why don't you tell us about some of these cards that we're pulling?
For Blue Pitch today, I really wanted to talk about some of the surprises that we've been hit with. Like, we had a solid month, 2 weeks, depending on how you look at it, for spoiler season, just like amping ourselves up for this set, trying to like just meditate on these cards and get ready to use them in our decks, what have you. Some things slip through the cracks. We can't predict the future 100%. I want to talk about what surprised us. What things did we not really get or sink in until we got to see the set in person? The first honorable mention is going to be Warmonger's Diplomacy. At the time that we're recording, this is like the big buzz around Flesh and Blood right now, is an Icelander player played Warmonger's Diplomacy against a Lexi player at the Battle Hard in Cincinnati. And basically, it took the entire Lexi player's turn because Warmonger's Diplomacy, I'm going to streamline things here. Either you can choose peace, and so you can only play non-attack actions, or you choose war, and you can only play attack and weapon actions. Warmonger's Diplomacy puts Lexi in a really tricky spot. Imagine you're Lexi and you have a face-down Codex of Frailty or any other non-attack action in your arsenal. Lexi really wants to use her arsenal. So if she chooses peace, she can't play any of her arrows, period. If she chooses war, she can't play the non-attack action from her arsenal, and she can't use her hero ability to flip it face up and gain access to her second arsenal slot from New Horizons. What this means is if you're not running, say, Trench of Sunken Treasures to get rid of your arsenal, then you're stuck. You have no way to get rid of your arsenal. That's the secret tech that we saw at the Battle Hard in Cincinnati the other day, and so that's like what people are buzzing about right now. If you didn't follow that, it's okay. Just basically, sometimes, if you're lucky, you can get a free turn just by playing this one card, which is a very strong effect against certain heroes.
We call that a time walk.
It's also especially good against Runeblades, because Runeblade's entire game plan, typically, I will, caveat, I think Vincent can actually play around this a little bit, but Viserai wants to play a non-attack action into an attack action every single turn. And the fact that now he has to choose, it takes one of those evergreen in the meta heroes and gives you a sideboard card that just shuts him down.
Mm-hmm. When I first read this card, I'll be honest, guys, I was like, what is this random jank that they're printing in this supplemental set? Whatever. This card is not important. I'll just choose war if somebody plays it, and they're spending their action in a card to make me only play my attacks. Nerd, I was going to play attacks anyway. But nope, I was wrong. I didn't evaluate this very well, and I don't think other people really did, except for, the people playing it at the Battle Hardened.
Fuzzy, I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. Do you think Warmonger's Diplomacy is single-handedly going to let you keep playing Briar for another year?
No. I don't think it's that good against Briar that it completely shuts her down.
You can't play CMH?
Yeah, but I can keep CMH around, and I can Arsenal CMH.
You can't get Embodiment of Lightning without playing a non-attack action first.
Yeah.
So it's harder to make your go-wide turns happen.
I think it makes some turns more awkward, but I think Briar overall has a pretty good density of attacks and like pitching for them, like with give and take and stuff like that. But yeah, Warmonger's Diplomacy, I thought it was like a PvE card because of the way it reads. I think it says like,
oh yeah,
to your left or your right or whatever you vote.
It kind of sounds like it's meant for an Ultra Pit fight.
Yeah.
It's definitely designed for it.
Like every hero picks something.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a multiplayer card, yeah.
Yeah, that's what pisses me off about it, but I'm really glad that it's finding like competitive use, like in an actual deck.
Have I mentioned that it is both blue and blocks for 3?
Yeah. Like, I heard an interesting take. I think it's a great take, but I think it can be a little maybe divisive, a little conversation provoking of like, is this just the new CNC of everybody's going to run this card? And we talked about it a little bit before we started recording the podcast, and we kind of came to not exactly. It is a bit more meta dependent, but it is probably very highly prized in a lot of sideboards.
For sure. Yeah, I think like every single hero at the top of the meta is going to demand at least 3 to 6 sideboard slots of every deck to compete. This is probably one of them right now. Probably won't be that way in a few months if Lexi gets another hit to her repertoire, or if another hero is just dominating her and the other decks on the top of the format. So we'll see, but I'm excited to use it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. No, it seems like a great card. Wish it wasn't $30.
Another card that I've really enjoyed, it's another generic Majestic, is the Mischievous Meeps. They're really cute.
Everybody loves the fucking meeps.
I love the Meeps. Some Briar players on the Discord were a little hesitant about the Meeps, but I think we're pretty much all in at this point. It's Snatch, but it has Go Again. But it costs a resource and it only swings for 2, but it's Snatch. It draws you a card. I showed my mechanologist friend Han, who should be appearing on the podcast soon, but he was like, oh, is this specifically to screw me over because I play items? I'm like, oh yeah, it does kind of steal items, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, this is also screwing you over.
Now everyone gets a Kyloria. I think it in Briar is like insane because not only does it threaten an embodiment, you have to block inefficiently unless you're using armor, which feels bad anyways on a 2-power card. And then you draw, and then the pitch usually is a downside for like a 2 Go Again, but in Briar, I feel like it's kind of insane because it fits so well into pitching for a rune chant and then playing that card and then pitching another blue earth for Rosetta. So like on turn 2 of a Channel Mount Heroic, this card seems insane.
Yeah. I'm not afraid of running cards that cost resources because they allow me to keep Channel Heroic around.
Yep.
Yeah, and even outside of Briar, this card seems great. This is another generic Go Again card, which just increases the ability to run the Oops All Red generic deck, where you just 0 Go Again, 0 Go Again, 0 Go Again, find all's Meeps.
Found out Mapes.
Find all's Meeps seems like a great play. I've definitely worked this into my janky Arachne Blitz deck, where I'm focusing a lot on throwing my daggers and then attacking for 1 and throwing attack reactions on top of that, and constantly just finding little ways of spending 1 mana here, 2 mana there, and just chaining. Like, I don't care what I'm blocking with. I'm always throwing these weird hands back at you, always able to present something off of a turn, and this just works so well into it. It is. Oh, you made a parallel between it and Snatch. I think it's like, it's so weird because Snatch is 0 and it's 4. That's really nice because 4 is that nice break point. But just like Snatch, it's demanding a card.
Yeah. Block my Meeps. You gotta. How about you guys? Were there any cards that you were a little bit surprised to see in the new set? Any specific standout cards?
Yes. I see something a little cute that they did. She's kind of funny. Blood Dripping Frenzy is basically like Shadow Blood Rush Bellows. It's a 2-cost blue block 3 to be, granted, but you have to banish your entire hand, and you really only get benefit if you banish blood deck cards from your hand. So unless you have like a really sick E-Pot lined up and this card is in Arsenal, then you could banish like 4 cards with blood debt from your hand. So this is obviously a very blood-centric deck. And then it buffs your Brute and Shadow attacks by whatever amount of cards you banish this way with blood debt. So like, I'm curious.
Or no, by 6 powers.
Oh, it is 6 powers. Wow.
Yeah, so you really want all blood debt 6 powers in hand.
That's even worse.
Yeah, it feels like the ceiling for this is so high because there is a chance for you to have the most insane, like, double Blood Rush Bellows.
For sure.
You get to draw 4 new cards and give all of your Brute and Shadow. Blood Rush Bellows was only Brute, so, like, your Ghostly Visit wouldn't get
Oh
that.
my god, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So, like, now your Ghostly Visit, and all of those are getting +4 for the rest of the turn.
And
then
God
when you,
forbid any of these are Sleuthing Shadow Peats that you banish.
yeah, because then you can play them again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I changed my mind. This card's sick.
It seems sick. I tell you what, I tested it. Not that great.
Yeah, you're gonna have fewer cards after than when you play it for sure. Unlike with like Blood Rush Bellow, where it keeps you card neutral, but you get the +2.
You also can't, like, one of the biggest benefits to Blood Rush Bellows was the fact that it turned on your Mandible Claws. This doesn't turn on your Mandible Claws, so you don't
true.
have easy go again sources. You need to draw into your Dread Screamers, or like you need to be playing against the Light Hero for your Hungering Demigon. Or you need to be flipped into Leviathan Consumed to be able to throw a Dread Screamer from your Banish Zone. It's awkward.
It is awkward. I do like it in like a turbo like Blood Debt build to turn on Hexagore and like you're rolling scabs for Hexagore plus XYZ attack. That seems kind of cool. But I think that like this reminds me of like axes for warriors. I feel like it's like just on the cusp of something really cool. So I'm open to seeing this as like a precursor to something more powerful, more consistent, or more viable down the line.
Yeah, it feels weird that here we're saying like Leviah got so much in this set, and yet we're saying, hey, this thing that is specifically designed for Leviah and Leviah's playstyle of Blood Debt with 6 power, there isn't enough support for it.
Yeah, right.
It's weird that we're saying that. I do see a combo version of this deck existing somewhere where like
For sure.
you're just blocking every single turn until you can arsenal this and play an E-Pot. And then, you know, you use your Carrion and your Scowling on the exact same turn to essentially block 12. We mentioned earlier how Scowling can essentially be 12 damage.
Right, right.
And then you have your pop-off turn where you deal like 20, 30 damage. That's what it seems like it wants to be.
That actually makes a lot of sense to me. I'd be interested in seeing something like that.
Yeah.
Come of this.
Leviah has so many brews, it's just going to take months to figure her out. But
sure.
right now, I think this card is surprisingly bad.
Midskis, for sure.
So I think surprisingly bad. Until someone really makes the list, until someone really warps their list to make this work, I think this card is just bad. Because I was expecting to be like, oh, I can just slot this in as another Blood Rush Bellow. And I can't. It just does not work that way. And I think that was the expectation when we all saw it at first. So in terms of what is this as a surprise, I think it is surprisingly mid.
True.
Mid to bad.
There was one card I was really hyped about, though. It's
Yeah?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a rare.
Fuzzy, do you have something you want to say?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's a Hellhammer, the Shadow Brute weapon that's a 6 power.
Hell yeah, Hellhammer.
So this is just a fat attack that banishes itself when the combat chain closes as a weapon. So like you're not using this on any Blood Rush turn. This is like, okay, I have a really bad hand. My opponent has a crazy turn. What I can do now, block 9 plus whatever equipment I have left, and I can still turn off Blood Debt without relying on, like, let's say for instance, I have a little bit of Blood Debt, but not enough to turn me into consumed. So I want to manage my life total a little bit better. Like this is for like if I'm playing the mid-range, like full recursion plan, I can block 3 cards or whatever, pitch for Hellhammer, turn off Blood Debt, and then arsenal something sweet. So that way I can have like a really sick pivot turn later on, or increase my Blood Debt with this card specifically, and then I can flip into Blasphemous Leviah Consumed later on. I think this is like a really cool enabler, which is like in line with what Leviah Redeemed and Consumed is trying to do with like not just straight up dying at the end of your turn.
This was one of those cards that got solved very quickly because everyone kind of did a double take at Leviah's card text. Leviah's card text says when you banish a card with 6 or more power. A card.
That includes weapons.
That includes weapons.
Yep.
Like, but I don't think any of us ever thought they were going to print a weapon with 6 power that could be banished, or like a non-attack action with 6 power that could be banished.
Yeah.
Or like an instant. Like no one ever 6 power on an instant on non-attack. It's never going to happen. But it's almost like they left it open in their original design of Leviah to allow for Hellhammer to exist now. It's really cool. I love that.
What surprised me, because I was really excited specifically because of Blasphemous Leviah Consumed, it allows you to play a card with Blood Debt from the banish zone every turn. And so my thought was that like you could play Hellhammer again, but I don't think it works that way, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah, you can't really play equipment.
Yeah, you use their abilities.
Yeah, which is lame. So I that's not really a surprise, but it did bum me out pretty good. So that's all I wanted to say about Hellhammer.
There was one interaction I wanted to bring up around the Eloquence tokens. And this is something that Vincent can really take advantage of. But Eloquence tokens, the way they're phrased, I'm just going to read the exact text. It says, when you play a non-attack action card, destroy this and the card gets go again. It does not say, destroy this and if you do, the card gets go again. If it said, if you do, that would imply that like Eloquence can only give go again for as many times as it is destroyed. But as it reads, it says, when you play a non-attack action card, destroy this and the card gets go again. You could actually play non-attacks at instant speed in response to the Eloquence token. The Eloquence token is not destroyed yet, so it still has the ability to give things go again.
Oh my, no.
This was an interaction that I saw from a DM Armada video. Instead especially has ways to play non-attacks at instant speed with Funeral Moon and Requiem for the Damned.
Bruh.
So if you have an Eloquence token out and you play a non-attack action like Read the Runes, just to get it started, then you play Funeral Moon from Banish. You'd have to have lost life this turn already. And maybe you play like a Requiem of the Damned from Banish at instant speed. This could give you like 3 action points at the end of that chain. And then you can do whatever you want with those action points, like maybe draw cards. You could also maybe start that whole process off with a Tome of Findle. You wouldn't be able to draw into like instants, but at the end of this chain, you'd have hopefully extra action points and extra cards from the card draw. It gets a little bit easier to pull this interaction off with Spellbound Creepers. As long as you've attacked, you can play a non-attack action at instant speed. So having instant speed non-attack actions and giving them go again, and potentially using the Eloquence token to get multiple things go again, there's a combo deck here that's kind of waiting to be broken, but it's not quite easy enough to pull off that I haven't like seen it take off yet.
It's been a week, bro. Can we like chill out with the Rune Blades breaking the meta?
Hey, yo,
like,
can we
like,
chill?
one set? Like, come on.
No.
I will also say, only Vincent can take advantage of this, because as a Viserai player, I was like, ooh, Eloquence token. I want to give my Read the Runes go again. There is no way of creating an Eloquence token for just Runeblade.
Well, there is also Chain. Chain can also kind of do it.
Oh yeah, Chain really needed another 2 extra action points. He really needed that.
The Grimoire
oh man,
of the...
what would Chain do without more action points? God forbid.
So Grimoire of the Haunt.
Oh man,
So,
that's funny.
But you can be on the lookout. If LSS ever prints Eloquence tokens in other classes, just think that that is something that an interaction that's waiting for you when it gets there.
Yeah, Vincent. Maybe they just gave it to Vincent because they're like, if Vincent breaks this, we don't give it to Viserai.
For real.
But if Vincent can't break this, maybe we can give it to Viserai.
I vote no, personally.
Well, we're not asking you, Joel. We're asking LSS.
It totally works in the rules too. Like all the rules that we've seen, like the release notes, seem to imply that this interaction is like on purpose and that it's not going to be changed anytime soon. Like that's the implication.
I have a surprise.
Okay,
We're
yeah.
super long. Maybe we can cut Hellhammer or
Keep
this bit.
going.
I was really surprised by an interaction. It's a brew interaction. It's been floating around a little bit on Twitter. Maybe you've heard of it. It's this little card called Chains of Mephetis.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I saw this card and saw niche sideboard tech. Oh, I get to play this, and if you are someone who likes to draw a lot of cards, you play Tome of Findalls, you're Alexi with 3 of a kind, then this shuts you down, right? They all goes to banish, and you can't pitch anymore, and you can't load it. You can only play it. And it kind of breaks the whole thing. And I'm like, oh, what neat little niche sideboard tech for Shadow Heroes. That's nice and interesting. And then people started trying to be like, no, you can play this for combo. This is like the Eloquence token thing, but for like Shadow Hero, like just Shadow Heroes. And I was like, okay, no, it's not, right? Like this can't be. It can't be. And I don't think it is. But it did surprise me. It surprised me that there are 3 whole cards that are just better with Chains of Mephetis out than not. It is Coax a Commotion, Trimmer of Erethel, and This Round's on Me. Because Coax a Commotion and This Round's on Me both play off of symmetrical card draw. Only now, it's no longer symmetrical card draw. Because when I draw the card, I get to play it from Banish Zone because it's my turn. And you don't, unless it's a D-React. Then they can play it.
Nerd.
So it's actually great. It turns off this symmetrical effect. It makes it asymmetric. I think that's very neat. I think it's also very cool because with Tremor, if you draw the Tremor, it went to Banish Zone, so it gets turned on and it gets its bonus damage. So that's a card that I would rather play in a Chains of Mephetis deck than if I didn't have Chains of Mephetis.
You can't play it out of your banish though, right?
Chains of
Chains?
Mephetis allows you to play whatever you would normally draw. Instead, you can play it for the
Oh my
damage.
god, what?
Yeah.
Wait, why was I not reading that correctly? I need
Yeah.
to read cards more. Reading a card
It's whatever.
It's pretty whatever for now, but like I was so surprised to see people trying to brew this, and I ended up building a Levia build for it. I tried to combine it with that Eloquence combo, which is actually what made me think of it. I didn't think about this, not the notes. I just remembered it because I remember that I built this whole brew off of this Eloquence combo where I was like, oh, I can get all these action points and then like Toma Findalls and draw all these cards at instant speed with Go Again, and then I have all these cards that I can play from Blood Debt. And then it was like, oh, this just takes a ton of action points and a ton of resources. And then I dealt 30 damage, and I'm like, man, I was doing 30 damage with my Berserker Blood Rush combo. I mean, this isn't that much. So it's not there yet. I think it can get there. I think every single time a new card with that symmetrical card effect is printed, you should think about Chains of Mephetis and whether or not you can build some janky brew and just dominate people at your armory.
There's something about Flesh and Blood and things being close to being on the verge of a potentially dangerous combo.
I like it. It makes me feel excited every single time a new set comes around, and you just
Yeah.
get to keep these little things in mind. And then, oh, this random common, this random generic majestic, all of a sudden they get seen in this brand new light because you were aware of these niche interactions. It rewards people for paying attention to the game. It rewards people for paying attention to the game for multiple sets at a time. It's good card design.
All right, you two, how about we move on to our Arsenal Zone? I'll be following my tradition today of gifting both of you a copy of the card that I'm shouting out and keeping it a surprise to keep you guys on your toes. So, when you think cards that cost 2,
Oh, I think Pummel.
of course you think Pummel. You should. But there's something that they don't normally get.
Go again?
Yeah, Go Again. My card today is a 2-cost Go Again.
Huh?
And it's one that I know you've heard of.
Oh, I know what it is.
Hold up. Dread Screamer?
Unconditional Go Again.
Unconditional
wait.
It's
Go
just
Again.
straight up a 2-cost Go Again.
Okay.
Wait, it's specifically 2 cost?
And I'll tell you, it's not generic. So don't think of a generic card.
2 cost?
It's a 2-cost Go Again attack.
Again.
Do you have any other hints? Any hints that...
It is run in competitive lists.
Okay, so this is running competitive lists. It's
You've
not
probably
conditional,
played against
it's not
this card
generic.
in a tournament before.
Unconditional Go Again.
I know there aren't that many, huh?
2 cost.
You can't even think of a single card with unconditional Go Again that costs 2.
I do know it. I'm
Listeners who know this are so upset right now. They are screaming in their cars.
If I was listening to this, I'd be like, you idiot.
You buffoon!
You guys are going to feel like idiots.
Oh, man. Hold on.
But you're getting a copy of this card today. You will be the proud owner of a 2-cost Go Again attack.
Can I try to guess the class?
Sure. What class do you think it is, Clark?
I think it is...
Wait, is it an attack?
It's an attack.
Okay.
Yes, it's an attack.
Oh, that's also important. Yeah,
It's an attack. You're right. That's important information that I did not give you.
I don't
an
think
attack.
it's Guardian, Ranger, Runeblade. Is it Illusionist? It's not Ninja. It could be Ninja. Ninja.
Oh!
I'm guessing Ninja.
It is a ninja card.
Oh, nice job.
Come on, ninja costs 2, has Go Again.
Surging Strike?
Surging Strike.
Yes, it's Surging
Let's go.
Strike. You guys figured it out. Surging Strike.
Wow, good job, Clark.
Yo,
This card is a classic. This was back before they either hadn't decided yet that 2-cost cards don't get Go Again, or they were like, look, it's going to be special. We're going to give it to this hero, and that's going to be their special thing is they get 2-cost Go Again. It doesn't have any other text. It just has Go Again and swings for 5. But that's okay because, first of all, that's on rate. It's weird to think of that as being on rate. When I was new, right? I was like, why would I want to swing for 5 for 2 when I could be swinging for 6 for 2? It must be that I get the value later for combo cards. But no, like 2 for 5 is on rate because you
how did that go again?
Yeah, the Go Again is what turns it into on rate, being able to keep your action point. You're not spending an action point to play it. Plus, think of all the crazy combos you could be leading with the Surging Strike. You play the Surging Strike, they go, okay, what is he going to follow this up with? At this point in the game, that could be Descending Gust Wave, Whelming Gust Wave. Do I already have the Gust Wave? Do you have to block it? That way I don't get to proc my Katsu ability.
That is such a stressful matchup.
In late game, you really need to think, okay, 5 damage is not nothing. That's an eighth of my life.
Yeah.
And in the late game, that can really matter. But if you have enough cards in hand, it's like, God, what else is he presenting? What do I need to keep in my hand? And then you just Kadachi, and you had nothing. But we are like, do I need to throw 2 cards in front of this? Can I risk that?
As someone with a little bit of a Katsu experience, he's my first CC hero, and I've been kind of keeping track of him because I have to play against him sometimes. I would like to offer you this piece of advice. If you're trying to decide, do I block the Surging Strike? More than half the time, the answer is no. Don't block the Surging Strike.
Well,
you're welcome, gamers.
That seems like
Take
the opposite.
5?
That seems like the opposite.
Well, like, block
5
it out. Like,
is
you probably
nutty.
want to block the next thing that's coming right after the Surging Strike. That's the reason.
What if it's
they find-
Kadachi?
It's never Kadachi. I don't think that ever happens.
So, I'm going to sign this card for you guys. I'm going to take it out of my sleeve.
For the record, I do feel very stupid for not knowing it. Sorry, viewers.
You are stupid.
No.
Yes.
Fuzzy already declared it. It's set in stone.
Surging Strike for you. Surging Strike for you. Joel, what's your card for today?
So my card today is one that I still need. I needed it for my armory yesterday. It's Howl from Beyond. It's a shadow card with Blood Debt, 2 block, 2 cost, and it buffs your next attack action card by 3, which is really cool because you can play it from Banish Zone, and with the new Leviathan deck, it's really sick because you can play this like recursion list and not just die to Blood Debt, or if you do, you can still play it out of Banish and have a really strong late game. And I still don't own one, so if either of you have one, I'd really like it.
Yep,
And,
I can hook you up right after we finish recording.
Let's go. All right, but yeah, that's the card I wanted to shout out because I still need one. And there was like 4 Runeblade players that played Chain previously, and none of them had it. So yeah, that's my shout out.
It's also super important for the recursion loop for Leviathan, that like super broken, just 3 card thing.
Yep.
It's very necessary having that 2 cost go again from Banish Zone to refill your graveyard every single turn.
It felt so nice to play it again for sure. How about you, Clark?
Huh? Sorry, what? Oh, I was just lost in thought.
Oh, my
goodness. Grown.
So the card that I am shouting out today is not lost in thought. It is Down and Dirty. Because it's the counter to Lost in Thought. Like, everyone's talking about Lost in Thought right now. It is this brand new illusionist tool that everybody really, really loves. Everyone talking about how great it is in Dromai. Like, you can pitch 1 for it. Great. You create Nash. And then you get to take away the popper in their hand so that you can attack with your dragons. Super good. Well, little did you know, I was hiding my popper in my arsenal.
Down and Dirty is so good.
Yeah. The first time I ever saw this card was when I was playing Dromai against you, Fuzzy.
Yeah.
And I attacked with my dragon with such confidence, such brazen recklessness. Like, you are Briar. You do not have CMH out. You have no 6-powered cards. If you do, I get to take it out like a Command and Conquer. This is great. This is wonderful. Take my Asvalai. And you went, no. And you blocked from your arsenal, and I got upset. I was like, no, that breaks the rules. Why are you able to do that?
Clark still won that game. Buzzy's still upset about it to this day.
Oh, actually? Oh, yeah, that was the...
You were running hot off of my own Dromai deck.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was a fun kind of
It was a
upset.
good game. But yeah, no, it was such great little sideboard tech, and if Dromai really starts to become the demon that we think she might in the upcoming meta...
I mean, why do you think Down and Dirty is spiking? You're predicting something that's already happening.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Down and Dirty is
Oh.
spiking because Dromai is strong.
I didn't even know that. I was literally just thinking about Lost in Thought and how I love that
It's
card.
so good.
I'm even putting it in my Prism builds to guarantee these like Herald hits. But yeah, being able to hide it in Arsenal, even being able to have extra block in Arsenal, right? One of the things that made Oldhim so great was that Crown of Seeds let you get block value out of your Arsenal card. And we're seeing this thing where there's Codex of Frailties being played a lot, where they're trying to put something in Arsenal and then take something out of hand. Well, guess what? I can still put a card that can block. with Down and Dirty into my arsenal.
Yeah.
Now it's only 2 block. It's not great, but if you're in the late game where like every point of life matters, then choosing to put a Down and Dirty into your arsenal could actually be a very relevant decision to make.
Yeah. I could see it being relevant, totally.
Yeah. So I just think it's super cool sideboard tech. Like just the ability for this really random common to all of a sudden have some really good value.
It's like one of the best cards in the game at doing one thing, and that is popping Phantasm. Because it can do it from Arsenal. Like, is there any other card in the game that is better at popping Phantasm? Maybe like Channel Mount Heroic, just because it turns all your cards into poppers. But I don't know, Down and Dirty, that one card just pops Phantasm so well.
I don't know. And even as I keep thinking about, like, being able to block from Arsenal is so useful. The mind game that happens in a game of Flesh and Blood. Someone will want to play CNC thinking, okay, if you have a D-React, I got you. It is 2 cards from hand, or you lose that D-React and take 6.
Or not even a D-React, just something you want to keep in Arsenal.
Yeah. And so, like, it feels so good to play CNC, and it would feel so good to just be like, block it for 2 and you get no effect. Like, is it like, are you still taking 4 damage? Yeah, but like, doesn't get that effect off. I like it. I really like this card.
There's a reason it only blocks for 2. If it blocked for 3, it'd be really strong.
Yeah, that would be insane. Block from Arsenal.
And it doesn't sound insane at first, but it is.
If it was 3 block, the card would be just straight good.
Yeah.
2 block makes it, But I think there's enough interesting use cases to keep your eyes on it and keep this card in mind. Maybe go through some of that Outsiders chaff that you opened and just see if you got a couple things in there to throw in your sideboard.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Have a great night, day, weekend.
Okay, bye.
Day.
Bye.
Commute.
Pitch It To Me podcast is hosted by me, Joel Recinos, Clark Moore, and Fuzzy Delp. Our executive producer is Talon Stradley. Our logistics coordinator is John Farkas. Our music is produced by Dillon Hulse. Our logo is designed by Han V. And our sound mixing is done by Christopher Moore. Last but not least, thank you, the listener, for taking the time to listen to our podcast. Be sure to give us a follow on your favorite social media platform at Pitch It To Me Podcast. Stay tuned for some outtakes.
We'll get you on both hell sites.
Have you guys ever thought about how, like, if you pronounce the 3-letter code for the set, it's da-da-da?
Possums and opossums are different? Fuck me.
I almost spelled Earathale